Have you ever heard of the term Pyrrhic victory? Because if you haven't, in short, what it basically means in like a conflict or a battle or something like that, when one side wins, but the cost to that side was so great that it may not have actually been worth it to engage in the fight to begin with. Because I'm reminded of that when I'm looking at the strikes that were going on in Hollywood this last summer and most of the fall between the various guilds like the Writers Guild and Actors Guild versus the studios. Because when it was all over, the studios did cave a little bit and give these unions some of what they were asking for. So these unions are claiming victory on the matter, but it was really at the cost of the industry as a whole. And I'm not just talking about like the costs and like people within these unions being out of work, even though a lot of them are permanently out of the job as a result of this, but also just various workers within the industry as a whole. The lives of hundreds of thousands of crew members have been upended, and even a deal between the actors and the studios might not help much in this short term. Now, this is coming from the New York Times, and it was written during the strikes when they were still going on. But up until this point, we haven't really understood how substantial the damage was to the livelihoods of the various workers within this industry. But a new study has come out recently that shows that it's pretty bad. This is being reported on from Deadline. Hollywood jobs down nearly 20% this year, and not just because of the strike, study says. And I do think it is fair to point out that this article does that, yes, it's not just a result of the strikes, because the fact of the matter is Hollywood was kind of already on a downturn prior to them, but definitely the strikes did accelerate the collapse. Entertainment industry employment in Los Angeles this year peaked in April when 142,652 workers were employed by the industry. As of October, there were 24,799 fewer workers employed by the industry than there were in April, the California Centric Report states of the 17% drop. Okay, so it wasn't exactly 20% drop, it was nearly a 20% drop like the headline states. Nationally, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, over 45,000 jobs were lost when the 12,000-strong Scribes Guild hit the picket line in early May, followed by the 160,000-strong Actors Guild in mid-July to mid-October. Now, I do think it is fair to point out, like the headline of this article stated, how the strikes weren't the sole contributing factor to the decline in the industry. It says right here in May of 2016 was when it was at its peak, and it was at nearly the same level in August 2022, which means they were able to bounce back following COVID and all the lockdowns and get to operating how they were prior to all that. But it does say since then, the employment has shrunk by 26%, and we already established 17% of that was a result of the strike, but the other 9% of that was just because the industry was trying to shift focus from how they're operating. Because if you look at 2022, what happened in there? Well, I already said it was the lockdowns and everything like that. People were shut in. They had nothing better to do than to sit at home and watch TV. And during that time frame, there was companies like Disney, HBO, they're launching their own streaming platforms. So a lot of these streaming platforms are basically trying to produce as much content as they can to try to compete with each other and taking a more is better approach. And since then, we've seen that really doesn't work for them. They've been losing a ton of money on these projects that people don't watch, and they're trying to shift focus to a quality over quantity approach according to what they're actually saying. From Disney's Bob Iger on down, executives over the past year have stressed a shift to less shows and projects in a cost-saving and stock-bumping moves cloaked as a quality over quantity. This article goes on to kind of conclude, the bigger picture reveals that peak TV rather than the strikes represents the more enduring threat to employment in the industry. And for the most part, I can agree with that. And that's why I was saying I think the strikes basically just accelerated the decline, but it really wasn't smart on the part of the unions to ask their employer for a raise during a time frame when they were trying to cut costs. I mean, I understand timing was just inconvenient. Their contract was up, so they had to negotiate. But so, I mean, dragging this out the way they did wasn't necessarily a smart move. And as a result, there's going to be even more actors and writers out of work because they're trying to produce even less stuff now than they were trying to produce in the past. And even then, this was kind of a short-term solution because they're going to have to negotiate their contracts in a few years again anyway. And it's possible industry will be on a decline still at that time frame, and they'll be asking for more. So we might get another strike in a few years, but I really doubt that. But at the same time, there's no way of really knowing conclusively because it's a long time away and anything can happen. But one thing is for sure is the industry is currently on a decline, and early next year, the Teamster contract is going to be up. So we might see another Hollywood strike. Now, I doubt that's going to happen because I don't think they want to stomach another drawn out strike, but you know, stranger things have happened. But as far as audience members can go, we're not short of content. I mean, there's a huge backlog of movies and TV shows that you can watch if you really want to watch something. You don't need anything new. And if you want new stuff, there's a lot of good things coming out of Asia. There are a lot of good things coming out of Europe. So even with Hollywood shutdown, I think us as an audience will be fine.